Thank you for joining this GCU Canyon Professional Development. My name is Dr. Rebecca Dyer, and I'm a full professor in the College of Education at GCU. This session is about special education continuum of services. The objectives for this session are to review the least restrictive environment requirements, to understand the continuum of placements, and to understand the IDEA regulations regarding least restrictive environment. So first we'll look at what is least restrictive environment. It's a key principle of IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. It emphasizes placing students with disabilities in educational settings that allow them to be educated alongside their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. What are the requirements for least restrictive environment? We talked about that we want to the maximum extent appropriate that students with disabilities be educated in the classroom and also participate in other activities with peers who are not disabled. We want to make sure we review the continuum of alternative placements for students. Within the IEP, we have to explain the extent, if any, to which the student will not be educated with peers who are not disabled. We also want to provide supplementary aids and services if needed. These are aids and other supports that are provided in the general education classroom and other related settings, and also can include extracurricular and non-academic settings. We also want to make sure we enable students with disabilities to be educated with students who are not disabled to the maximum extent appropriate. We want to think about how does least restrictive environment impact our students? It actually has a very big impact on them. We want to think about inclusive classrooms. This is where students with disabilities have the opportunity to participate in the general education classrooms alongside their non-disabled peers. This allows for increased social interactions and positive role modeling and promotes a sense of belonging and acceptance among all of the students. LRE also includes access to the general curriculum. In an inclusive environment, students with disabilities can access the same curriculum as their peers. The LRE ensures that they receive appropriate accommodations and support to participate fully in academic activities. LRE can also support improved academic performance. Research has shown that students with disabilities in inclusive settings often demonstrate improved academic performance compared to those in segregated environments. The exposure to grade level content and higher expectations can lead to better learning outcomes. We can also see enhanced social skills. Interacting with non-disabled peers in the general education classroom provides opportunities for students with disabilities to develop social skills, communication skills, and develop friendships. It also promotes self-advocacy and independence. In the inclusive setting, students with disabilities have more opportunities to advocate for their needs and preferences. This promotes self-confidence and fosters a sense of independence as they actively participate in decision-making. LRE can also reduce stigmatization. It helps reduce stigmatization by normalizing the presence of students with disabilities in regular classrooms. This creates a more accepting and inclusive school culture for everyone. It also provides tailored support. Students with disabilities in the LRE receive personalized support and accommodations based on their individual needs. Teachers can focus on targeted interventions, ensuring students' specific needs are met. Positive behavior modeling. Being in a general education classroom allows students with disabilities to observe and imitate appropriate behaviors and social interactions that are modeled by their non-disabled peers. We might see greater parental involvement. Inclusive settings often lead to increased parental involvement as parents are more engaged in their child's education when they are part of the general education community. And finally, we have real-world preparation. Inclusive environments prepare students with disabilities for real-world experiences by providing them with opportunities to interact with diverse individuals similar to what they would encounter beyond the school setting. Let's take a look at the continuum of placements. So these are different settings or classrooms that are available to support students with disabilities. So we have the regular class with supplementary aids and services. The regular class was what we would call the inclusive classroom. We have the resource classroom, where they may spend some of their time in the inclusive classroom, but then be pulled out to participate in our resource classroom, which is specifically tailored to students with disabilities. There's a special class, which is typically all students with disabilities in one classroom together. There are special day schools. We also may have students who need to be homebound, or there may be residential schools as well. So as we look at this continuum of placements, the very least restrictive would be the inclusive classroom or the regular class. The most restrictive would be the residential school. How do we make the decision regarding placement? Well, it needs to be based on the IEP, where we have outlined all of the students' needs. We're going to make this determination annually because we review the IEP document annually. We want the school or least restrictive environment to be as close to the child's home as possible. And unless the IEP requires a different arrangement, the child should be educated in the same school that they would attend if they did not have a disability. We also want to think about how a shortened school day may actually impact least restrictive environment. So while there may be valid reasons for a shortened school day to accommodate a student's individual needs, we have to really think about the potential implications on that student's LRE. The schools and educators should collaborate with parents and the IEP team to explore different solutions so that we can maintain students' active participation in the general education environment whenever appropriate to ensure the benefits of inclusive education are maximized. So when we think about a shortened school day, we think about how it can significantly impact LRE. The LRE principle emphasizes that students with disabilities be educated to the maximum extent appropriate with their non-disabled peers in inclusive settings. But a shortened school day may limit the amount of time a student with a disability spends in the general education classroom. And this means we're reducing opportunities for social interactions, academic engagement with their non-disabled peers. In the inclusive setting, students with disabilities benefit from exposure to that general curriculum, the peer interactions, and positive behavior modeling from their non-disabled peers. And we know that this plays a crucial role in fostering social skills, self-confidence, and a sense of belonging. So when they have a shortened school day, they may have less opportunity to participate in group activities, cooperative learning opportunities, or extracurricular events. And this limits the students' overall inclusion and integration into the school community. So we really want to think about, if we are considering shortened school day, are we impeding the students' LRE? We know that we have to review the IEP document at least once a year. We can revisit the IEP at any time if needed and make changes and do an addendum if we need to. As we do the annual review, we want to look at, is there any lack of expected progress towards meeting the goals? Is there any lack of progress in the general curriculum? And then we consider the IEP placement and its essential part of the IEP review. So placement here, we're referring back to LRE. So if a student's not making progress on their goals and they're not making progress in the general curriculum, we want to consider as a team, do we need to look at changing the student's placement or changing the student's LRE? LRE positively impacts students with disabilities because it fosters their academic, social, and emotional growth. It encourages independence and it promotes acceptance and understanding for all the students. So we know that the more time students with disabilities spend with their non-disabled peers, the more acceptance there is for both populations. As you've learned information from this session, you can pause here and take a moment to reflect and think about 3 things you've learned, 2 questions you think you still have, and 1 thing that you enjoyed. We have a reference here with more information about LRE. And thank you so much for joining this session.